Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint podcast, everyone. I have with me a very special guest. This is Chris Thompson. Is it all right to call you CJ? Is that what you usually
get? Either one. Yeah, I go by CJ.
All right, CJ. And CJ is actually a very special guest because he's probably got the most accolades of anyone that we've had on at the moment so far. He has a Bachelor of Science and a Master's in Geoscience, and also he has a Doctorate in Curriculum and Instruction. So that for me is the most key one for today, because you're going to be highly qualified. You're coming from this case study from a perspective of someone that's very highly qualified to judge us and our own curriculum. So I'm really excited to chat with you today. But would you mind just starting off with just an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as you say, most of my degrees, all my degrees.
I've already said everything, haven't I?
Are in education, and that's really just been my whole career. I started as in '85, I started as a substitute teacher, and then eventually ended up in Houston, Texas. And that's mostly because I was living in Michigan at the time and substitute teaching, but my Spanish was okay. So I started looking for jobs in places where I could use that, and Texas ended up being a place. So I started teaching in '88. So I've taught teachers, I've done curriculum development, I've done assessment, I've done like coaching of teachers and skills specialists. And I guess the other part of that was that when I moved to Houston, Texas, I had 4 years of high school Spanish. And that was a good solid base of, I guess, what y'all would call learning, but not necessarily acquisition. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could carry on a simple conversation and I could read it and write, but I had no real practical experience in Spanish. But being in a classroom every day with kids that don't speak English but speak Spanish, that's how I really developed Spanish. But that was really my one success story, despite making maybe not very serious attempts at learning a bunch of other languages. Mostly with, the traditional methods. And so by the time I got to Mandarin Blueprint in 2020, I had tried nearly everything that you could think of to learn languages, and lots of different languages, including Chinese. And that's how I got to where I am today. When I signed up for Mandarin Blueprint, that's my educational experience, my work experience, and sort of my language experience.
What was it that, was there any specific problem that you were facing that caused you to search for a Chinese course, or is it just a passion of yours, language learning?
Well, so yeah, I would say several things. One is just sort of a bucket list. My Spanish is good, but I would like another language, and Chinese is different enough. I ended up, when I took my freshman year at college, I actually took Tagalog, just because it was very different. We had Chinese at University of Michigan, but it was a tough course. And so it was sort of a bucket list thing. I would say the other thing is, in the States, we're on lockdown. So I had that, plus I just finished up my doctorate. And so, my brain, I'm just one of those people who sort of like can't sit still intellectually, or at least academically, and lockdown has made it tough. So I saw this and I thought, well, I'll give it a try.
So tell me more about your doctorate in curriculum. So what would be the specific name for it?
So curriculum instruction. It's so. My education experience has really been professional and education has been science. So it's a STEM education. So that's STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Mm-hmm. And it is actually global. What do they call it? So it had lots of ideas in it. STEM, global education, and then curriculum instruction is really the department at the Texas Tech University. But it was also about research. So we had to obviously do research and write a dissertation. So it's that idea as well. Now, but despite that, I mean, the degree wasn't really focused on developing curriculum, but that actually is my current job. I work for a company called Accelerate Learning, and that's all we do is we develop math and science curriculum. And I've done that at the district level as well. So in my blog, when I was writing about the development of this course, what I call the scope and sequence of the course, that was really based on my experience as a curriculum developer, which is what you do with the curriculum development is you look at standards. For me, it's been science, sometimes math. You look at the standards, what are the educational objectives, and then you try to put them in order and develop the learning experiences that are going to get the learner to that outcome.
Yeah, and you already wrote, I think one of our most impressive case studies for, you already wrote the full article and you used citations and all sorts of fancy academic stuff. It was
I just finished the doctorate, and every
you were in that mode.
Now, I have MPA 6 citations, and
it was fantastic. I was so impressed, and I'm going to put a link to that on this podcast, and vice versa. I'll put a link to the podcast in the post. This chat really is just, I just want to sort of delve a little bit, either delve deeper or just go over, just do a voiced version of it if you like, or whatever you like to do. But what would it mean for you personally or professionally or both if you could reach your goals in Chinese? And you notice I say reach your goals because not everyone has the same goals. Not everyone likes to, not everyone wants to say, oh, I want to speak like the most fluent, I want to go on Chinese TV and speak fluently and all this sort of stuff. Whatever your goals are, let me know. But what would it mean for you if you achieved them?
Well, so right now my goal, and I just decided probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks into signing up for this course, that I am going to, before January 1st, 2022, I want to take and pass the HSK4. And I just, I didn't even know what the HSK4 was before I took the course, but actually on recommendation of you and Phil, I started, I got myself this HSK 1 book. Actually I have books 1 through 4. And so anyway, that's my goal. And it's really, I mean, it's not going to do anything for me professionally that I know of, although I will say this. We started out in my company, we started out just writing curriculum for Texas. That's where we are. We're all now actually in all 50 states. We've written curriculum for every state. United States does not have a national curriculum, but we do have something called NGSS, which is 22 states have signed up, so we've written to that. But we're expanding now into the international market. So, who knows, a couple of years from now, if we are in the Chinese market, we may want people to go to China. So yeah, that would be really cool if travel, someday when we're allowed to travel again, and if that opportunity arises professionally, that would be cool. My wife and I also like to travel, and it's been nice. We traveled the Rhine, and before that, I just studied just enough to say a few, German phrases, and that was really nice. German people in general were very warm and welcoming. If you just, I've noticed that every time. Like, in the Houston area, most hospitals are staffed by a lot of Filipinos. And when I can drop a little Tagalog on them, that is always nice. Up. Yeah. So Chinese is, I guess, one of those languages that I am constantly encountering people who speak Chinese. Especially Houston, we have a really big international population. I was at the pharmacy just the other day, and there are some people, and they're really struggling to get their prescription. I obviously don't speak enough Chinese to help there. But they were taking some time and blocking the line. And so they turned around to me and eventually said, "I'm sorry." And I just said, "没问题." And they were just like, "Oh, wow." So anyway, so yeah, so like the HSK4 goal is really just sort of an arbitrary one that I picked out of a hat. But yeah, so but I said it aloud to my wife just so that it existed in the universe.
That's a good idea. Like, get those goals out. Tell your friends so that if you don't reach them, it's just a little bit embarrassing. You got to have that little bit of social, stigma attached. And
and so and that would like I say that's really just it was like when I signed up for the PhD program. It's just it's like it was something to do. It was a goal. Having a PhD would be cool. And so I put it out there, and 4 years later I had it. So I have 16, 17 months to go. And I think it's probably doable.
How long have you been on the course so far with us?
I looked it up the other day because I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's probably been a couple months. May 29th is when I got my confirmation email for signing up. So all of June and most of July. So it's been 7 weeks. Yeah. 7 is definitely short of 8 weeks. So, which is pretty amazing because, I actually in first year of college, I met a woman, half Chinese, who was actually, she grew up in America. So she took the Chinese class on Saturday mornings, but didn't really speak Chinese at home. And she was learning Chinese. And so I was in that sort of Chinese, like peripherally in that community. And I had language partners, and I probably learned, a few phrases and maybe 24 characters. But I'm up to like 300 now in 7 weeks. And, and I think the other thing is, and other people have commented about it in the course, and I commented about it, is you take an introductory Chinese course and, day one, you're going to learn how to say, in air quotes, say, pleased to meet you, good morning, what is your name? Those sorts of things. And in this course, that's not the way it works. But 7 weeks in, and when I say air quotes, what you learn to do is parrot those phrases, almost literally like a parrot, right? Yeah. Your thing and whatever. We're 7 weeks into this course, and I thought, oh, how do you say pleased to meet you? And I just sort of like wrote it in my head. Right. And then, because I always, every time I'm on in Mandarin Blueprint, I always have a Chinese typing website up. So I just typed what I thought was the way to say pleased to meet you. Yeah. Copy paste it into Google Translate, and they're like, "Yep, that's the way you say." So anyway, so like I say, it's much different writing a sentence or constructing the language yourself than just parroting it. Yes. We have that same issue in science classrooms. Science classrooms. I don't know. I used to hear a lot when I first started teaching. A lot of professional development in science for science teachers is they would quote you these statistics that in an introductory chemistry class or biology class, you learn more new words than you would in introductory French or Spanish, right? But the way we would do it was wrong, I always argued, and that was you'd start a unit, here's all the electrical circuit terms, conductor, insulator, right? And here's the word, here's the definition, and the kid has no experience with those things, and they don't stick. And I invented this thing called Woodles when I was teaching teachers. They were like little cardboard boxes on sticks, and some of them had fried beans in them so they would rattle. And I would take half the teachers and put them in a room, and they would copy down. I created 7 words, right? describe these woodles. And they would copy down the words and they would do a worksheet. And then the other half of the teachers, they would be playing with these woodles. And as they played with them, we would introduce vocabulary and they would write their own definitions for them. And then we'd come together and take a test on these. And the people who had experience were the ones that, that could use the words meaningfully. And so we have that thing in science where science is full of vocabulary, and you can teach kids science vocabulary with here's the word, here's the definition, here's the word, and they can drill them. But I'm like, no, just the kids need to work with the thing, because if you don't work with the thing, you don't need the word. Exactly. And my argument has always been, that's why language exists. That's why, right? Because no one needed a word for a giraffe before they had seen a giraffe.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and that's how you learn your first language, right? You pick stuff up. You're like, huh?
Well, and another bit of research I found was that in the United States, or English-speaking kindergartners, they show up in kindergarten, 5 years old, and they already have a 10,000 word vocabulary. And my argument is, they did not get that. The moms do not say, we're going to the grocery store, so here's a list of all the things you'll see at the grocery store, right?
Memorize this shopping list. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And they do as you say. The kid points to that. And then, apple. And then the kid points to something else and says, apple. No, that's not an apple, that's a pear.
They're living it. They're living the language, not just learning it. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so that's, you say, so it's so going back to like the Woodles thing is, by the end of the kids, when I had the teachers playing with Woodles, by the end of it, they were writing their own sentences, right? In other words, they were using the words to define the words, because they had experienced it. And I think that's the, as I said, it's the whole point of language is it's your way of getting ideas across. And you have to be able to construct phrases and questions, not just recite phrases and questions. And I think that's obviously the Mandarin Blueprint Method, right? Is to get you to that point. And that's the other thing is that I talked about in the blog I wrote, the article I wrote, which was, it seems counterintuitive, because people say this isn't the way a language course works. Well, yes, you're right. It's not the way a traditional language course works. But I would tell people, just think of this as, you want to speak like a native, you got to learn like a native. Yes. Native means born into it. So what do babies do? Babies start off, all they do is make sounds, right? They just make the sounds, and babies actually make the sounds of all the languages in the world. Yeah. So when you were a baby, you made all the sounds of Mandarin Chinese. It's just that if that wasn't your home language, it didn't get encouraged, right?
Yeah, and that's why I've got my new baby. I want to make sure he doesn't, because we're going to go to England at some point very soon. Right. And I want to make sure that he doesn't ever lose that ability, because it's tough to learn it when you're an adult, get to learn it back again. It's very tough, but you can do it.
Well, yeah,
it's very tough.
Yeah, well, and when you think about it, babies, you were even making the clicks of a language like Thompson or something like that, right?
Right.
Because babies just make random weird sounds, and then if, as you say, if 20, 30 years later you try to speak Xhosa, making those sounds is like, that's so hard. But you were making them anyway. So the point is, so babies just start making sounds, and I have a 3-year-old grandson, and he's just now, forming sentences himself. And I think the other thing I said in the article, the blog, was, I don't think I took a class called grammar until high school. Yeah. Right? Because I didn't like, and I had this conversation with my Chinese language partner, who were talking about forming nouns from adjectives, like happy and happiness, and sad and sadness. And he was like wondering, does that rule work all the time? And I'm saying, no, not all the time. But what I point out to him is, if, and because English, of course, has all these just weird, yeah, that's a rule, except for all the times it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But what I point out to him is, like, children, if you said braveness, people would know what you meant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I guess the point is, a person who says braveness understood the rule. Oh, ness, right? Like, and babies or children do that all the time. They would say things like, I runned.
Yeah.
No, they have to be corrected. But the point is, they learned a rule, and it's the ed on the end of thing means past tense, and they use it. And you understand what they mean. They just have to, well, sorry, English is messed up, and run is not a word. We have ran. Why? I don't know.
And that's another thing. They're not worried about making mistakes. They don't have that
right.
neuroticism that comes with years and years of trauma that we get. So we they're happy to make mistakes, and oh, that's wrong. Oh, okay, so it's ran. Okay, cool. And they just carry on.
I think, and I posted it recently, that my sentence that I was so proud of about seeing my teacher at the store yesterday. Yeah. I think Phil corrected it. I had some of the phrases in the wrong order. But the point is, he understood it, right?
I understood it too, yeah. He
understood it, and it made sense. It's just like, well, this is generally the rule for the order of things. But I was able to take all the things and put them in nearly the right order based on the fact that that I had been getting the input. I mean, I think, and things like this. This is so. What I've done with this is it's got. Are you familiar with these kinds of books?
I've never seen that actually. I didn't. It's a graded reader. It's got a lot like stories and things like that.
Right. So, and what I'll do is, it starts off with full Hanzi, and then it's got like the Hanzi, the Pinyin, and the English. So the first time through this book, I would do the Hanzi, Pinyin, English, and I would try to cover up the Pinyin in English, and try to say the words, and then try to translate, and then look at it. And I did that like 2 or 3 times. But by the time I had done it 2 or 3 times, I was enough through the course where the 150 characters here I knew, and now all I do is I go through and I read the full Hans stories and just check myself sometimes. And I've got the HSK2 reader. I picked it up a couple of weeks ago, a week or so ago, and tried to read through it. And it was at that level that we talk about, that you and Phil talk about, that I talk about in the blog, which is I'm still in the frustration for that. So it's still a little too high. But I figure probably by the end of August, an HSK2 reader will not be a problem for me. And I'll do the same thing with that. It's what we call in early education a print-rich environment, right? You want to be surrounded by a lot. I mean, especially like for 3- and 4-year-olds, you want a print-rich environment where you're constantly having exposure to. And this is something else that you talk about. The best input maybe is that input that's just above where you are linguistically, so that it pushes you higher. But I mean, babies and children, they're constantly surrounded by like the news, and that's at a level that's way too high, right? And so I think it's okay to have input. Like I just recently watched a really bad Chinese movie, and a lot of it was English. Pardon?
That doesn't narrow it down very much.
No. Well, it was something called the translated. I didn't bother looking for to try to really figure it out, but the translated title was Vixen, and it's about a lady cop and terrorists, but they're actually robbers. It is actually an unapologetic ripoff of Die Hard, but imagine Chinese lady in the Bruce Willis.
Fantastic.
I mean, and the building's under construction, just like Nakatomi Towers, and it's for some inexplicably Christmas for no reason other than they are just totally ripping off Die Hard. Anyway, so I'm watching that, and the cool thing was, even though there were subtitles, I was like, oh, I understood, 50% of that sentence. So, and I'll probably keep up with that as well. Is just try to get some of that, because that's the course is great, and nearly every time I think that there's printed text. You get the spoken, the sounds. But what I'm trying to get from my language partner and maybe some Chinese films or television is like just a ton of spoken Chinese at native speed. But I'm into the point of the course where we've got those opinions and stories and dialogues. And so that is, I think a nice digestible chunk of spoken Chinese, which is, I think, where I want to push next. Because not surprisingly, I think my reading, is I'm pretty pleased with my ability to read. When I look at something like this. So I look at this,
right?
And I'm like, I can read that. I mean, it's like and I would say they're dumb stories, but people go to the store and buy cups. Yeah. I mean, people go to the store and buy cups, and they're very pretty cups. And do you want to buy some cups? Yes. Do you have some cups? Yes, I have some cups. They're very pretty cups. Yes, they are very. I'm happy to buy those pretty cups. So people do a lot of talking about cups and dogs and cats, and tables and chairs. But I mean, like say, I mean, there's this whole story, and I can read it in Chinese, so that's really cool. That's the one part I think I think y'all do it in the correct order as well. That is, the sounds and then words and then sentences. And I'm only now ready for stories or entire dialogues, which is, of course, the opposite. A dialogue is what you would start out with in most courses. And it would just be parroting phrase, you parrot a phrase, you parrot a phrase. So.
What's three parts? You went into this in great detail, I think, but in your article, which is fantastic. But just off the top of your head now, what three parts of our curriculum have made the biggest impact on you?
Yeah. Well, and of course in the article I put four, but number one was really just sort of, I guess, the underlying foundational, right, the structure of the course and how it's set up. But for specific things, so the Hanzi movie method, which I went into detail, was, I mean, that is, I would say probably most people who try to learn Chinese characters do some method of the Hanzi movie method. That is to say, they look at a character, they're like, I don't know, what does it look like or whatever. And then, I had, when I was learning Chinese, I understood some bit of memory research and how vivid imagery was supposed to help you. So I tried to do that. But I think the other thing is it's systematic, right? I didn't have a system to it. And the other thing I talked about in the article is that the other part of that system is you kind of have to already know all the parts before you can develop the system, right? Like, how many props do you need? I mean, that's a question. Like, you can only, like, you could come up with a prop for absolutely every stroke, or I mean, a prop for every character, and then you would have thousands of props, and your brain can't handle that. We could come up with 5 props, or 7 props based on strokes, but then like scenes would have 30 props in them or something like that. So anyway, so the same thing with where to break the initials and the finals. That determines how many actors you have and all that sort of stuff. So that's what's great about the method is I know it's based on research. I know it works, but it's systematic, and it's a system that I could not have come up with on my own. So there's that. I would say there's also the what was the other thing I said? So Thompsons movie method. Oh yeah, the software, right? And I was going through some software. I was going through the Anki deck last night, and I zip through the course. I'll zip through the course and maybe get 10 new characters a day. And when I say get 10 new characters a day, I know I'm not getting them, right? I developed the movie, and sure enough, they come up in the Anki deck, and I'm like, what the heck? I don't remember that at all. But I never worry about it, right? Because I'm like, I'll just do again. And it's like the Hansa movie method. I couldn't come up with a system on my own, right? And same thing with, like, if I had a bunch of flashcards, I could, like, okay, I'm going to put this in the pile I don't really know. I'm going to put this in the pile of, right? But then when do I look at it again? Right? If it's in the I don't know pile, should I look at it right away? When? When should I look at it? Is this a maybe pile? How often do I look at the maybe pile? So I could do that, but there's no way. I mean, it would just be way too difficult. With the Anki deck, with the SRS, I don't worry about it. I just click, you know what? I couldn't come up with that character at all. I'm going to hit again. That was good, but it wasn't like this, so I'm going to hit good, right? And then I don't worry about it. And what I'll notice is a character will show up. And they'll show up, and I'll be like, oh, got it. And I am pretty confident that when that happens, like if it had been a day later, I wouldn't have gotten it, right? So the system knows really, right, when to bring it back just before it dropped off, so that, and then it'll show you more frequently, and eventually you get to the point where like if it doesn't show up for a month, that's because, you know what, I got it, and I'm not worried about it. So that's, I mean, it's just, well, I'd say it's like the Force, right? Just don't worry about it. Just go with it.
Yeah.
Let the Anki deck, let the SRS worry about all that stuff. And then I guess the third thing is just the supplemental videos, which are becoming more and more important later on in the course. Early on, the video videos, the regular videos are really all, you're getting all your content from that. But these supplemental videos, they're motivational. They for me, what I like is when you do talk about the research, and you do like, not everybody is gonna like that, but with an educational background, I'm like, yes, and I pointed out that especially for someone who's like steeped in education, I'm like, yeah, that's Vygotsky's zone of proximal understanding. That's it's just like foundational stuff in education. I see it. And so sometimes it's nice in those videos to make it explicit. And then, you're also, I'm also now just finally hitting the grammar point lessons, right? Where you take one aspect of grammar and just sort of say, let's look at that. Let's apply it to a bunch of different situations, which I find really, really good. Just comparisons. I mean, it's like, okay, because I've seen lots and lots of comparison sentences, but I really want to say, okay, what about this case? What about this case? What about this case? And you'll notice a lot of my posts are, even early on, I would see something, I'm like, oh, okay, what about this? What about this? Does it work in this? Does it work in this? And that's what these videos are starting to do now. They're like, okay, in this case, you would do this. In that case, you would do that. And so I would say those are probably the three, even though that third one is kind of broad, those extra videos, but those definitely the Hansa movie method and the SRS are like the two solid components that have gotten me where I am.
Yeah, tell me. So regarding the SRS, had you never used it before? took a course?
No. Like I say, I took a Pimsleur Arabic.
So it's sort of SRS, but like kind of a basic.
Yeah. So it's and it's what is it? And I put it in the something. Yeah, it is. So yeah, Pimsleur it was in the 60s. He had this something graded interval or something.
Space.
Anyway.
Well, the SR of SRS is.
But Pimsleur, when he came up with it, it was another term, but it was almost the same idea that you have different intervals. I say it's in the article I wrote, but the Pimsleur course, and it was like I just took it was a free introductory Arabic, right? Like the course one, and it does the spaced gradient interval. So you get some words and phrases, you get them a lot at first, and then not so much, and then not so much. The point is, it's unlike the SRS, it's not responsive to the learner, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, you get a lot at first, and then the intervals get longer between repetitions. But if you're struggling with something, too bad, it's not going to show up for a while. Or if you've already got something, too bad, you're going to get sick of looking at it because it's going to be repeated a lot. It's just sort of hard coded into the system. You know, the intervals are hard coded. But so I was just thinking about this. I can't even remember what it was last night. The character for ing, right? Right. Sure. Yeah. That's a complicated character. For some reason, I got it like that. I don't know why. But then there was some other. It was actually a 2-character word that it showed it to me like 5 times in the same sitting, and I'm like, I still don't remember. But that's the cool part about the SRS, the Anki deck is like, okay, you know what? Again. Yeah, I mean, everybody's brain is different, and the things that will stick and the things that don't stick for everybody's, as we know, it's based on personal experience. Like what lived experiences do you have that help the things stick? Those are different for everybody. So there are some things that I'm going to be like, got it right away, and some things I'm like, I know you just showed it to me, but I still don't remember it. So show it to me again. So that's
what amazed me. I wish I could go back to my old school and give a speech about flashcards. Like, guys, hey, do you want to just really easily ace all of your exams every single semester? Do Anki. Just do it every day, and everything you learn, all those facts that you have to pump into your brain as a child, just put it in Anki, and you will not have to cram or ever study ever again. I wish that it was more commonly used in schools. So tell me a little bit more about the hands and movement method specifically. Like, what parts of it? First of all, sorry. How long does it take you to learn a Chinese character these days?
I would say, I was trying to think about that. I probably learn 2 or 3 characters. I would say 2 characters a day. I was trying to map this out. I was like, what's my current level of characters, which I think it's 150 is good. I mean, I think I easily have 150 down. We're up to 283. I think I'm up to 283 in the course. That's the official number. But I don't know all those characters. So I would say probably 2 a day. I might learn cover 8 a day, 12 a day, but until I've until it's shown up in the Anki deck several times, it's not solidly in there.
When you get it wrong, when you get a character wrong or some aspect of a character, what do you usually do? What's your process?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the good news is, and that was one of the things about the Hansa movie method is, like, if I see a character, I'm like, okay, I can see the props, right? because that's the way it works. I can see the props, and I'm like, okay, I can see the props. All right, who's handling the props and where are they? And that's, you know, one of the things I talked about in the article is that those are all handles, right? Every one of those things is a handle to that word or that character. And it's a place for your brain to grab onto and then like slowly reach over to get to the other parts. And I would say, you know, half the time, 3/4 of the time, I can do that. I'm like, might take a while, and then I'll have to click the hard button, right? But there's probably like a third, 1/4 of the time, like, you know what? You know, if I hear it or see the opinion, I'm like, okay, obviously I know the set and I know the actor, but I'm like, I don't remember what they were doing. So, I mean, I don't remember the props, so I can't write it.
What I mean is, once that happens to you, if you recognize the props, but you can't think of the keyword, how do you go back into your scene and fix it, or do you just keep repeating?
Okay, I see. Yeah. So So every time I hit the again button, right? Especially if I have to hit the again button, that means I don't have it. And yes, what I've taken to doing is when this is just recently, is when I'm going, I always have the Anki deck up when I'm going through the course. And so when I create a movie, in the notes section, I actually type a little paragraph to myself. You know, and it's Charlie Chaplin is at Angela Merkel's office, and he's, you know, looking out, he's, you know, in the alleyway behind the office and whatever. And I will even, what if I do? I bold the props and I underline the scene parts. Anyway, so one thing I'll do is I'll read my little notes, right? And I'll go through the scene again. The other thing that I've decided to try to do is try to add a sound effect and a smell to every scene, just because those sound effects will help. And I know the smell, you know, olfactory sense is the most keyed into the memory. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm trying to think. Angela Merkel's office smells like beer. Angela Merkel's office, ANG, and it smells like beer. And there's an Oompa band playing, just because that's how I decided Angela Merkel's office is. And so I'll add those special effects as you call them, and that I think that helps as well, because what I find is when you hit again, it's going to show up 2 cards later, and then I'm like, then I've got it, and I may replay the scene again, even though I think I've got it, so that when it shows up 5 cards later, I don't have to worry about it. And you know, my goal is eventually you don't have to play the scene at all, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that it's a great
system. To make sure, because it sounded like what you were doing was just like, oh, I got it wrong, okay, and not fixing it and just trying.
No.
Okay.
No. I do replay the scene again. Maybe try to add some details. And I think it's a good point, because I think I wasn't really doing that for 2-word phrases, like 2 character words, right? I didn't have a system for doing that, which is why I think it was a 2-character word. That those are the ones that I'm struggling with the most, because I'm like, okay, what is it? But I mean, there's not really a Hansa movie method for 2-character words. I know you got that thing, what's your lived experience and what's your mnemonic device, which I've started to try to do, because otherwise, if I just hit again and it shows up again, yeah, I'm gonna have to see it again and again and again. But yeah, that's the nice thing about it. Yes, if I get it wrong, I do try to, at least with the characters, replay the scene and add detail.
The keyword is one that gets messed up a lot in the early days, you know, like especially with abstract keywords, you know, like want, something like that. So I like to think that we talk about that a lot throughout the first 105 lessons, 105 characters. So yeah, keep trying those special effects. I'm sure that with time you'll really grasp it. So going into the method, or before you signed up, or whilst you're in the trial period, say, was there anything you were skeptical about?
No. And I think, and that's one of the things I talked about in the article, is that, and I can see how some people are skeptical, because like it doesn't follow the traditional course outline, but because so even though my educational background is really science, I always taught the ESL kids, the English as a second language kids. So I did get some language acquisition theory along with my science, science pedagogy. And so because I've tried to learn different languages, and I took a linguistics course in college, and it's just an interest of mine. When I saw the development, when I saw how the course was built, I wasn't skeptical. I thought, this is novel, this is different, but it's correct, right? I know I can see, as I say, in your videos, in your supplemental videos, you make your research, in the research behind it explicit, but I can see it like I can see it in SRS, I can see it in the Hansa movie method, I can see it in the whole course. When you start off just doing sounds, and like some people might get frustrated, this is silly, why am I just making a bunch of random sounds?
That happens a lot, and it's so funny. Earlier on you were saying you love those bits where we talk about our methodology and stuff. We get so many but like regular messages being like, when do I get to learn Chinese? Like, where they just sign up and they're
right.
After 7 minutes, they still haven't become fluent, and they're like, what's going on? Yeah. And people want that quick feedback like they get from Duolingo, where they're like, okay, I've learned that word. Next word, next character. But we sort of ease into it slowly. We talk about ourselves a little bit high, talk about our methodology. So I'm really glad you like that, because some people don't. Some people just want to, okay, come on, teach me Chinese, quick.
And I guess I see why it seems like y'all recommend the pronunciation course first, but don't necessarily force people to do that first, because I can see how some people would be like, I want to be able to write a character. But I went through it because I could see, like say, I knew first stage of language is babbling, and it's just making sounds. And the other thing is, unlike a lot of languages, like the difference between, sh, sh, and sh, right? That's a huge, and the tones, that's a huge difference in Chinese. So I knew pronunciation is key. So anyway, yeah, I was not skeptical. I can see why lots of people are skeptical, and I would say I was just probably well poised with what I already know and have studied to approach the course and say, this is done right, so I'm not worried. In addition to that, the SRS, and even more importantly, I think the whole approach to language acquisition that Mandarin Blueprint uses is fundamentally different than most language courses, and I will also say fundamentally more correct than most language courses. So yeah, definitely if someone's going to learn Chinese, I would say Mandarin Blueprint Method, especially now, with the internet is obviously the most convenient way, and with so many of us like on lockdown, like you want to try to go sit in a Berlitz classroom, fine, good luck with that. And actually I would be interested in seeing other courses for other languages. Any language I think would benefit from the structure that you all have put. The whole notion, it's what I have been saying about science vocabulary for years, right? That the way we try to teach science vocabulary is wrong. And I've tried to turn it on its head. And so I think, the Mandarin Blueprint Method does that for Chinese. So I would definitely recommend it for people learning Chinese. I would also encourage anybody else who's trying to build their own language course for Portuguese or Ojibwa or whatever, to look to this, look to the Mandarin Blueprint Method as a way for developing other courses.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I thank you very much for taking the time, over an hour of your time to chat with us. We realize how valuable your time is. So